Well, I actually, what I'm going to do is to talk about a different aspect of Hacking Team, not the technical, but a political one. How was surveillance, Hacking Team's actual surveillance in Latin America, and what implications did all this have? Let's just get it over there. So we are a non-governmental organization from part of Derechos Digitales. We defend and promote the human rights on the internet from a Latin American perspective. This is important because most conversations regarding privacy security come either from Europe or the United States. And no offense there, but our realities in Latin American countries are very different democratically and institutionally. So today we want to talk about surveillance and the actual impact of surveillance and the consequences of a specific Hacking Team's surveillance. I wanted to show you because it's actually very creepy what Hacking Team does. So I'm really glad you did the metadata analysis on them also.
You have new challenges today. Sensitive data is transmitted over encrypted channels. Often the information you want is not transmitted at all. Your target may be outside your monitoring domain. Is passive monitoring enough? You need more. You want to look through your target's eyes. You have to hack your target. You have to hit many different platforms. You have to overcome encryption and capture relevant data. Being stealth and untraceable. Deployed all over your country. Exactly what we do. Remote control system trial. The hacking suite for governmental interception. Rely on us.
So yeah, that's actually Hacking Team's commercial. It's this big Italian, as they were saying, spyware manufacturer. Just a little bit about what the type of content that they can actually, this software can be actually used to take is password, messages and emails, contacts, calls, microphone and camera that can also be remotely activated whenever they want without you noticing it. Information from Skype, Facebook, Twitter, or any social network, geographic location, hard drive, every single letter press from your keyboard, every single mouse click, whatever you delete, whatever you're seeing. It's practically having a public officer behind your back, seeing what you're doing and registering it at every single moment in every digital realm of our private lives. So it's not only about mass surveillance, right? This is targeted surveillance, and it's not only surveillance regarding metadata, the one that we just made reference to about Edward Snowden and the NSA, but it's also content surveillance. This is an example of what they can actually see. This was published by The Intercept in 2014. So we have these John Doe social networks, and the most contacted, the social networks here, the most contacted people and the most visited websites, and of course, geolocation in real time and all those things. And when you think about surveillance offline, it's always been part of the state, but in internet it's made much worse because all of what we think and are on a daily basis is reflected on what we search, who we call. If metadata can reveal that much amount of personal information, this is just completely 100% intimate. So the good news was that Hacking Team was hacked last year by a hacker called Phineas Fisher. And this hacker published 400 gigabytes of information regarding Hacking Team, of which the metadata analysis that we were hearing about before was made with the exchange of emails that was published in this hack, but it's also contracts, payment receipts, every single thing the governments could not deny they had not done or negotiated with Hacking Team. The hacker, she hacked the Twitter account and recalled Hacking Team Hacked Team and just published everything there. It was great. And she says, that's all it takes to take down a company and stop its abuses against human rights is the beauty and asymmetry of hacking. What did we learn from the hack? So there was a lot of information. And what we did in Derechos Digitales was to make a 9-month investigation about the legality of this type of software in Latin America. This is our report. You can find it online in derechosdigitales.org. It's only in Spanish right now, but there's a summary in English for those that are interested. Our main conclusions were that hacking team software does not comply with existing legal standards in the region. It means it's illegal. Its use, it's illegal, and unduly infringes upon free speech, freedom of information, privacy, and due process. But one of the most interesting things was that, okay, so in the report we also did, we tried to communicate better how hacking team works at a technical level. It's a very complicated thing, so we make these little colorful graphs. And the important thing to notice here is that hacking team's software goes through a series of anonymizers. So the endpoint of Galileo software in Mexico had to go to 4 proxies. It went to Korea, not Korea, sorry, like Honduras, Australia, and New Zealand before actually getting to Mexico. So it's also, it opens up a lot of questions. Why is my data revolving around the world? What are the protections for that? And of course, it makes it much more harder to trace. So if you don't know you're being spied upon, because of course the nature of spying is secret, then you cannot exert anything against and resist it. To our surprise, most countries in Latin America either contacted or negotiated with hacking team. It means the ones that are in reddish are the ones that bought the software. We made an analysis of how much money did each government spend. Mexico, a country that is going through a serious human rights crisis, was the most important hacking team client in the whole world, buying almost $6 million of surveillance software. And then we have also Honduras, Ecuador, Chile, Brazil, and Colombia. In these countries marked with yellow are the countries that where we know that hacking team was used to spy on activists or political opponents. So that's Mexico, Ecuador, and Colombia. We'll tell you a little bit more of the stories later. And what worries us also is that there is an increased interest for Latin American governments to buy surveillance software. Brazil bought almost 50,000 euros worth of this hacking team software, but they are also producers and manufacturers of another surveillance software called El Guardian that they also sold to Uruguay. In Colombia, after the drug war, surveillance is just part of the daily activities, and there's a little scandal that I will tell you about it later, but it's completely out of control. And in Chile, what struck us here is that Mexico is a much bigger population, and there's over 11 agencies that bought the software, but Chile spent a little bit less than half of the money that Mexico spent, but only for one single, the police investigation department. So that's something that is really striking. When you see the map, in all this information put together, we know that there's something to worry about. Given the close relationship of Latin American governments with authoritarianism and undemocratic governments, the use of these tools is especially alarming. In Mexico, this is a picture of the protest of the 43 disappeared students. And in Mexico, there's a very strong and sad reality where governmental authorities and organized crime are the same thing. We saw it with when the police disappeared the 43 students, and that now the official version, we know that the military was also involved, and they opened fire against 108 students. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. This happens in Mexico, not all the time, but at least we've been hearing about cases of once a month. They recently found a grave with 408 bodies that they could not identify. And it's the police and the military that are doing these things. So when hacking teams says that they only sell to governments, it's a complete lie. Because when you are giving this surveillance software to the Mexican government, you're giving it also to the organized crime. And that's something that we must take into account. I don't know if this reality could be replied or it's the same anywhere else, but it's something that must be taken into account and consideration, especially when talking about hacking teams' responsibilities. So the other side of the coin is that, of course, in a country where El Chapo Guzman, one of the biggest drug lords of the cartel de Sinaloa, escapes 2 times from prison, of course, you might think, well, surveillance software is needed, right? So, I mean, we need to catch him again, and he will probably escape again because of a terrible Mexican corruption in jails. But what we saw in the report is not only that 8 out of the 11 authorities that purchased the hacking team software cannot use it; it's illegal. But also, the governor of Puebla used remote control system to spy on political rivals, academics, students of a university, and even journalists. And the Mexican government agency requested 2,074 judicial orders, which we don't know if they are justified or not. There's no way of holding those many judicial orders accountable. It's a screenshot of Hacking Team's Excel document that we could see because of the hack. And this is very striking too, because the Mexican oil, it's a private state oil company, and they bought Hacking Team software. So what is the control there? What are they using it for? How do I know that any one of these non-authorized agencies are using it for personal advantage or personal gain, spying on their wives or husbands or whatever? There is absolutely no legal control regarding this. Then in Ecuador, the technology was used to spy on an opponent of the government of Rafael Correa. It was Dr. Carlos Figueroa. The picture is a picture of the protest of 2010, when there was a big questioning of Correa that some have called an intent of a coup d'etat. And Dr. Carlos Figueroa has always been an opponent. He was put in jail in 2014 because of a criminal libel against the president of Ecuador. And then he was infected with Hacking Team. And we know this because of the leaks as well. The story was published by Associated Press. Wikileaks, some people are getting confused. Wikileaks is not the platform that released all these documents, but they did provide with a search engine that was very useful to surf through all this information. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. It was too much information, so Wikileaks. And this is a screenshot of, because of Hacking Team will learn that all the traffic of Colombia was intercepted by the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency of the United States. So we also have all this interventionist culture of the United States also being used in spying in Colombia. Colombia, at the end, did buy also Hacking Team software, and this is just one of the emails that were exchanged because they needed help, the DEA needed help from the Hacking Team people. In Panama, now that with this big scandal, the Panama Papers, the government bought surveillance software in 2011 under the direct order of President Ricardo Martinelli. He was on the phone during the meetings, telling him to put them on speaker and to say everything that they could to report back to him. Then in 2012, they had elections. The software was just magically went missing after Ricardo Martinelli's hand-picked successor lost the election. It just went missing. And this opens even more questions. How does something this powerful and dangerous just go missing without any consequence? Where is it? Who is using it? Do they know how to use it? Who are they using it against? I forgot to tell you earlier, but this software can be implanted either by a USB sticks, which is usually done in airport control and revisions, security revisions. It can be used in fake Wi-Fi spots or actual Wi-Fi spot where they just bypass your password. And the most common method has been through phishing, which is the sending of these fake links that once you click, you get infected, or once you open a document, you get infected. That was the case of Carlos Figueroa. They sent him a fake invitation to an event, and then he opened it, and he was infected. In Chile, this is the picture of the Policía de Investigaciones, the investigative police. They said they bought it, they did buy it, because most governments, the Mexican government, of course, tends to deny everything, so they just denied it, and nobody can explain how, because all the emails and all the information is there. There's very little to deny. But the investigation police of Chile did recognize that they bought the software, but they said they were using judicial orders in their application. And this is still doubtful, because one, we don't know if judges actually know what they're authorizing, and two, if it's not regulated by law, then how are judges justifying the use of this software if it's not explicitly regulated? And if it's not regulated, you cannot use it. It's very simple. It's the opposite of citizens. We can do whatever is not prohibited, but authorities can only do what is explicitly permitted. Surveillance comes, this is a picture of Augusto Pinochet, the dictator that was in power in Chile from 73 to 90. And in the region, in Latin America, surveillance is part of the government since the dictatorship era. So what are we going to do now with this software and all the implications that it's had, being that it's used in every single country, it's illegal. One other interesting fact that was also, it was published by The Intercept, because of the Wassenaar Agreement, all the exports and imports can have to be done through an intermediary. It means like other enterprises, a hacking team cannot directly sell. And in the region, it was Robotech in Colombia, Ecuador, and Panama, and Nice Systems, that was also mentioned earlier, in Colombia, Honduras, and Guatemala. And this person called, The Intercept published about this person called Ori Soler, that was an AK-47 arms dealer that was in charge of the hacking team negotiations. And that is also something extremely worrying. How do we have an AK-47 arms dealer now dealing with weaponized software? And what are the controls for this? What does this imply in Colombia, in Guatemala, in Honduras? There's also very paradoxical for us. This is a quote from the report, because the main goal of Galileo is to aid criminal investigation and intelligence systems to safeguard democratic society, but they are doing it with undemocratic methods. They are doing with opacity, illegality, violation of human rights. So this is not even a topic of the mean justifies the way, because the mean is also flawed itself in terms of democratic transparency. So the final question, how do we resist? It's it's kind of a difficult one, because hacking team can actually bypass encryption. Now David Vincenzetti, the CEO, is actually bragging about bypassing Tor. So how do you resist something that is so invasive that not even encryption can get you by? Of course, we could say with mass surveillance, there's things that we could do to protect ourselves. We could answer also that we should push for more and better regulation regarding this type of weaponized surveillance software. But then the question is, in Latin America, even if there's good laws, and even if we win that fight, the implementation of those laws is still going to be in hands of corrupt and arbitrary authorities. So what is the game here? And also, even though regulation could exist, whenever an application can be used for surveillance and control, it will be used for surveillance and control, in or outside of the law. And that is something that we have learned over the years. So the question about resistance, it comes at the end, and we've heard it a lot this first day of Republica, to user consciousness of our privacy and our persons and intimacy being surveilled. There's things that, of course, we can do technically wise to not open weird links that weird people send us over the internet, verify that if someone sends us an email, we can verbally verify that person is actually sending it, protect ourselves with VPNs, so Wi-Fi cannot be used to infect those type of things. And this is the final question. It's up to us at the end, and to push for more and better control of this software, not only in Europe, because in Europe now there's a directive that implements the Wassenaar Agreement at some level. It's since January 2015, but in general, all over the world, there's also a very clear responsibility of the Italian government to investigate more and more in these practices. As for Latin America, this software and any surveillance software for the matter is illegal. It can amount to a lot of abuses, and I am here as part of Derechos Digitales to denounce this. And thank you very much. That's it. That's my contact information in case you want to do anything else. And I was wondering if there were any questions. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. I just have a simple and very small question. Do you have any data on Bolivia and Paraguay, which were left blank on your map? Because I think due to changes in the law in Bolivia as well as in Paraguay, doors are quite open for mass surveillance. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely. They were left blank. I don't know if you can, I cannot zoom in. They were left blank because they are the two governments that, and it was not Paraguay, it's only Bolivia, and then it's, I believe it's El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and the French Guyanas that did not buy, and Suriname that did not buy the software. Bolivia negotiated. There's some emails that talk about an appointment for a negotiation, but at the end that didn't pan out, so they didn't buy anything. That's why you can see in this Bolivia plan to meet with hacking team, but there is no further confirmation whether that meeting took place, at least from the leaks. For the rest of the countries, it's a very little percentage of Latin America that did not at least try to contact or negotiate with hacking team. And this talks about a very big surveillance market in Latin America, right? Like there's money, there's people, and there's national security problems. So it can be all those things, when they come together, they pan out a very worrying panorama on the topic. Thank you. I hope I answered it.
1 second, microphone's coming.
I suppose there are also competitors to hacking team. Would you know anything about, I don't know, American, Chinese, other companies who would be targeting the Latin American market?
In terms of hacking teams competition?
Yeah, offering the same kind of services, but I suppose there will be others, right?
Yeah, definitely. Citizen Lab has a very good report on just launched a really interesting report on PackRat, which is another surveillance software, and it was very scandalous in Ecuador because it explicitly target political opponents and dissidents. There's also in Mexico, and I believe it's Argentina, it's Finfisher of Gamma Group that is also being used in the region. But definitely I would say hacking team is the most prominent, even though there's other competition in the region.
And any news on Cuba, what Cuba is doing?
No, I know Dominican Republic did buy hacking team software. Cuba is kind of a mystery still. I'm not aware of the Cuban government buying or negotiating with a hacking team specifically. And in Derechos Digitales, we still don't know if we are going to do actual work in Cuba or not now that it's opening and all these things. But it's definitely something to take into account and consideration given the geopolitical implications that could have.
Any more questions?
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for all your time.
Thank you.